Greetings, EDU 533 students. This is Professor Nguyen. We are now in week number 8, and I want to share some insights on what you need to do for week number 8 as we are marching towards week number 11, which is the completion of EDU 533, Instructional Design and Development. So this is what you need to do for week number 8. So for week number 8, you need to read chapter 9. Chapter 9 focuses on developing instructional materials. And there are 2 videos in which I posted in the announcement to help you with understanding the instructional materials that are discussed in chapter 9 in relevance to cognitive load and the 3 types of cognitive load. So make an effort to view the videos accordingly and when you have time. So after you read chapter number 9, I hope you have done so because we are right now on Thursday. And I know you are trying to enjoy the time with your family. So after reading week number 8, as materials in chapter 9, post your original discussing with peers response. Make sure that the peer response is substantiated with evidence from the text or focus on the central idea of the peer response. So once you read chapter 9, post your original discussion, respond to a peers, then you need to plan, have an outline, think what you will do, then start writing. After you write, you need to use tutor.com, grammarly.com to revise and edit your paper. Don't submit the original version once you submit for Grammarly. You have to go back and fix the recommended suggestion by grammarly.com. Then you submit your assignment for grading. So week number 8, the written assignment focuses on content sequencing, instructional strategy, and the message. And the assignment is worth 150 points. So what is extraneous cognitive load? This is important because you need to understand what is cognitive and what is cognitive load, and then what is the intrinsic cognitive and the extraneous cognitive. So basically, cognitive is related to thinking. So cognitive pertains to cognition, which is how we use our mental process to process newly acquired information and understand what is being told or what's being shared through our 5 senses. So we have 5 senses, the sense to smell, the sense to hear, the sense to see, the sense to taste, and the sense to touch. So we use those 5 senses to acquire information. That's part of our cognition. That's part of our cognitive ability. So then what is cognitive load? So there are 3 different cognitive load is basically how we go about as learners, as observers, taking in information and process them. So there are different types of cognitive loads, which can include intrinsic. So the intrinsic cognitive load focuses on our personal traits. Our cognitive load. Okay, so the intrinsic, it can be personal, our pre-existing knowledge, our prior experience, things that matters intrinsically. And the extraneous cognitive load come from factors that we cannot control. Only the person who trying to communicate the message to us can control that. So those are the three types of cognitive load. So the extraneous cognitive load refers to the materials, the strategies, the process that instructional designers or teachers use to deliver the lesson. They use the extraneous cognitive load to communicate the message to the students. So how they use the materials, how they share the message can affect the outcome of the students. So then what is German cognitive load? So the German cognitive load is basically the way we see things and process the information so we can understand it. So the factors like extraneous cognitive load, our learning traits can affect our German cognitive load. It can affect how we process the information. It can affect how we absorb, how we come to understand what is being shared with us. To support German cognitive load, teachers or presenter can make learning relevant and rigorous. So how can they do that? They can make the connection. They can use the students' prior knowledge and present the material that the student can make the connection. So the student can process the information easily. That is German cognitive load. So I went ahead and post the example of week number 8 discussion. And so I can hope that you have a chance to read through here and be able to use this as a model to guide you in discussing, in posting your own discussion with the peers response. Make sure that you have substantive feedback, not 1 or 2 sentences. Now, in order to understand the instructional design, we need to look at this framework. This is a framework of the instructional design process that help us to determine where we are. So we are right here. So as you can see here, we started out with having a problem. And we go to identify the learning characteristic, analyze the task that the students can learn, have instructional objective, come up with content sequencing, identify the instructional strategies like cooperative learning group, be able to communicate what will be shared with the student, what will be taught, and come up with the way to deliver instruction. So the development of instruction, this is where we're going to implement the lesson. So this is a framework of the instructional design process, and this is where we are. So after we do this, we're going to evaluate the instrument that we use. And then this part, we're done. We're done with the process of designing. And we have to make sure that we revise everything we need to do. And then we have to plan, we have to implement, and then we have to evaluate. So this is the framework that we use to make sure that we appropriately design instruction for the students, because they come to us with an instructional need. So in week number 9, it focuses on that teachers or instructional designers have or plan strategies such as having learning station, using think, pair, share to support instruction. Teachers and instructional designers can choose from a variety of formats to deliver instruction, which can be printed manual, videos, coaching, and immediate feedback. A common feature of almost all instructional is text, the words, the information that is printed on the papers or the textbook or the manual or the materials. Gary Morrison showed that instructional designers or teachers can pose the following questions. So these are the questions is similar to like the essential question. So we can understand what is being delivered to the student. How do I use my design plan to develop instruction? What guidelines can I follow? What makes good instruction? Shall I do role play? Are there alternatives to having an instructor-led lecture? So these are the questions that we can pose. So we can ask ourselves, how can we go about to craft an effective lesson for the students? Remember, the reason for having a lesson because the students or learners have a need. This is the problem. Thus, having or teaching a lesson is a way to have students or learners solve their problems. In doing so, the presenters or teachers need to stay focused on the problem using generative strategies such as recall, integration, organization, and elaboration. Teachers and instructional designers need to make sure they make the objective support the resolution of the instruction. So whatever the objective they have should align with the problem that the student brought to them, to you, because they say, I have a problem. So now we need to design instruction. And the first thing we need to do is we need to have objectives, the learning targets. So the learning target needs to be able to match the need of the students. Prior to selecting materials for instruction, instructional designers and teachers need to revisit the learner's characteristics, such as their gender, such as they might have disability, they might come from different cultural factors. These characteristics affect the learning outcome. Use heuristics process to enable students to learn and acquire new information by making the instruction or learning process concrete. Control the step size, using appropriate pacing and maintaining consistency and using cues. Teachers and instructional designers need to be aware of the cognitive load, which can include intrinsic, extraneous, or germane. Instructional designers and teachers need to plan for getting all necessary materials for instruction based on group presentation, lecturing, distant learning, self-paced learning, small groups, and cooperative groupings. So this is what chapter 9 discusses about, how we go about to obtain, to gather instructional materials to deliver the instruction. So for week number 8, and the week number 8 asks you to write a 3 to 5 page paper. So the first part, focus on the content sequencing. So in the content sequencing, you can either choose learner related or task expertise. You choose one or two. You don't have to choose both. Just select one and explain. Then you have to choose the instructional strategy. The instructional strategy, okay? That is appropriate to the instructional sequencing strategies. Then focus on the outline, where you have to talk about the pre-instructional strategies, such as pre-test, where you have to talking about how you will signal the text structure and the typography. Typography can mean like, for example, you give the students a handout, and the handout might have 5 paragraphs. How will you make sure that the students pay attention to your paper? You have to have subheadings. You have to have italics, bold, certain colorful text. So the typography is how you present your text on a paper so the students can see and be able to process. If you use different fonts, it might create confusion for the students. Then this extraneous cognitive load can affect their German cognitive load because they are confused. So use consistency is one way to signal the text structure through words and typography. Determine how pictures and graphics can be used in instructional materials. So these are the part where you have to discuss. So you have to make sure that you focus on the content sequence strategies, these instructional strategies, outline instructional methods that include pre-instructional strategies, how you signal the text through words and typography, determine how pictures and graphics used in instructional materials. These are the contents, these are the elements of your paper, nothing else. Then make sure that you have 3 quality resources. Don't just list the website. That is not a reference. So as again, your paper should have a cover page, which is not a part of the 3 pages. You should be able to have subheading because this is a research paper. Subheading. Before you start writing, indent the first sentence. You'll see here, the spacing is equally the same. And when you use Strayer's writing standards, you can cite the source accordingly here. I'm citing size number 1. I just put 1 in the parenthesis before the period. Then I go to my source page and list number 1, and I flush evenly. I include the name, the date, the name of the title, and the URL. This is how you cite the source. So again, when we talk about the content sequencing, Gary Morrison defined the content sequencing as the order in which instructional materials, which are the content, are presented, so the learners can have better chances in understanding and achieving the goal in learning. The content sequencing is similar to the procedures in which teachers use to deliver instructional messages for the students. So there are many strategies associating with the content sequence strategy. Teachers can use learning related, word related, concept related, content expertise, task expertise. However, for this assignment, you only have to choose either the learner related or the task expertise, one or the other. So the learning related content states that learners must go through different stages before advancing to another stage. The stages include identifiable, prerequisite, familiarity, difficulty, interest, and development. The task expertise content sequencing strategy focuses on the teachers or trainers who use appropriate teaching tasks that have learners to learn new skills and become experts in completing the newly acquired tasks. So you have to choose one of the 2 and discuss. You cannot choose both, one of the 2. Then you have to do the outline. Okay, there are many instructional strategies. There are many instructional strategies that teacher can use to deliver their instruction with sequencing. They can use concrete materials, graphic organizers, modeling, recalling, integration, organization, cooperative grouping, small groups, content-based inquiry, and elaboration. So these are some of the strategy that you can use to discuss your paper. Then for part 3, you have to talk about the instructional message, where teachers and instructional designers use words, pictures, and the text itself to communicate the specific learning outcomes to the learners. So the students themselves can solve their problems. Gary Morrison stated that the message is the pattern of words and pictures teachers and trainers use to create and communicate their learning objectives, their learning expectation with the learners. The instructional message can include pre-instructional strategies such as pre-test, behavioral objectives, overviews, and advanced organizers. Using pre-instructional strategy is the way of signaling the text. So you have to discuss the instructional message, which includes pre-instructional strategy, how you signal the text through words and typography. Should you have bold? Should you use caption? Should you have color-coded words? Determine how pictures and graphics can be used to support instructional materials. Then you need to make sure that you cite. Make sure that you cite 3 quality sources. So if you want to reference the materials, use chapter 7, 8, and 9. Chapter 7 talk about instructional strategies. Chapter 8 talking about the instructional message. And chapter 9 talking about the development of instructional strategies for instruction. So I hope this can help you a little bit in getting your discussion done, in getting your paper submitted in a timely manner for grading. Remember, we are now in week number 8. Week number 9 is only 3 weeks away from, well, maybe roughly 2 weeks away from today, because today is already Thursday. So this is Dr. Nguyen. By any means necessary, text me, call me, email me if you need further instructional support. Have a great day.